I want to tell you what happened with the FCC yesterday. So last week, this just came out, last week the FCC adopted an order to approve the purchase of more than 200 radio stations in 40 markets just a couple of weeks before the presidential election. Now, I don't think this is going to affect the presidential election, but the one who's behind this is George Soros. George Soros just bought 200 radio stations in 40 different markets. Now, the vote came down in the FCC. It was partisan, 3 Democrats voting for it, 2 Republicans voting against it. But here's the real problem. According to existing FCC rules, foreign company ownership of U.S. radio stations is not supposed to exceed 25%. But Soros took foreign investment money to make his bid. And then he asked the FCC to make an exception to the usual review process. So the FCC fast-tracked this. Why? Why would they do that? There's something else that is really important. You know, the left has been saying, we got to get off of dial-up. We got to get off of dial-up. We need high-speed internet for the rural areas. Well, for some reason, the FCC has delayed the rollout of the internet to rural communities. Again, why are they doing that? Maybe the guy who has the answer is the FCC Commissioner. He's Brendan Carr. Brendan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Wonderful to join you again.
I wish we would talk on good things, you know. They would call me sometimes when something, you know what? Something great happened. Brendan, tell me, do I have this right, first of all, about the George Soros takeover of radio stations? And if so, why was there an exception made and fast-tracked?
Well, as you know, the New York Post has a story out last week, or actually yesterday, that says that the FCC last week adopted an order that effectively fast-tracks Soros's purchase of these 200 radio stations. And I haven't, commented on that publicly, because the fact is the FCC hasn't released a final decision to the public yet. But the reporting is that we adopted it last week in a 3-2 vote. I've been outspoken on this particular issue for the reasons that you talked about. We have a very clear process at the FCC that we've set up that could take 6 months, could take a year to go through to review the foreign ownership at issue here. But for reasons that are not sort of plain to me, the FCC Commission, for the very first time ever, has skipped that process for the benefit of this Soros-backed group. And I'll sort of let people draw their own conclusions about it. But it's an unprecedented decision for the commission.
Never happened before.
That's right. We at the commission level adopted one way that you can buy radio stations if you have excessive foreign ownership, which they do. And that one process is this lengthy 6 to 1 year national security review, and it's been skipped here. Now, a lot of these stations are probably just, classic rock or news, but not all of them.
And they don't have to be. They can switch
there's a number
formats.
Of stations that, there's a number of stations that you're on. For instance, at least 3 stations that you're on that are part of this deal. Same with Sean Hannity. Same with Dana Lash. Same with Mark Levin. So there's at least some of these that are, conservative news and talk outlets.
I got to tell you, if this was a conservative doing this, I doubt the FCC would have okayed it. Any ramifications? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, Glenn, we actually have that example. So not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago, there was a group of conservative buyers that wanted to purchase some South Florida radio stations. And a number of Democrats spoke up very loudly and said the FCC cannot allow these conservative outlets to buy these radio stations because, in the Democrats' view, it could cost them elections in South Florida. And amidst that pressure campaign, the conservative buyers abandoned the deal. And so we've seen across the board concerted efforts by Democrats to sort of weaponize the government to go against conservative speech. There was California Democrats in Congress that wrote letter to cable companies telling them to drop Fox News, Newsmax, and OAN because of the editorial decisions that their newsrooms were making. We had a Baltimore Democrat prosecutor called on the FCC to investigate a local TV station that was exposing her own corruption. And so this is sort of the reverse side of a pattern that we've been living under the last couple of years of weaponization of government power, in my view, frankly, against free speech.
Now, we are told everywhere that radio is a dying medium. Why would George Soros want to invest this kind of money? What did he say in his request?
It's a good question. I mean, look, I don't know a lot of billionaires right now that with all of the options for where they're going to place their money, they're sitting around saying, you know what really kicks off a lot of cash right now are local radio stations. Maybe, but if anything, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing a flight of capital from local broadcasting because it's so challenged right now with competition from social media companies and over-the-top providers. So maybe there's a business case there that they're smart enough to see that everyone else doesn't see, but that's really not the direction of the capital we're seeing right now.
And the foreign investment, do we know who these people are?
No, we don't. So the Audacy stations went into bankruptcy, and the Soros Group put together a bunch of investors to buy it out, and they've come forward and said, there's in excess of 25%, which is the threshold, of foreign entities that are investing. It's more likely than not that there's no big deal there at all. But the fact is, we usually run a national security review to identify who those are and whether they're fine or not. And what Soros has said that is in the near term, they'll wall off those foreign stakeholders and then come back to the FCC down the road to run that longer sort of 6 month to 1 year process. So I think we do need to continue to stay vigilant here. This is an issue, at least with respect to that portion of it, that will come back before the FCC in the coming months.
Any idea how long it'll take before he has control?
I think it will be almost instantaneous, after the FCC releases a final decision that approves it. They've already been sort of partly getting them out of bankruptcy, but I think it will be a near instantaneous ability to take the reins of all these 200 stations once the FCC's decision, if this reporting is right.
This is such a game we're playing here. When do you suppose, if this reporting is right, they will report on the vote that you were involved in?
I think the reporting that I've seen suggests that, it could be within the next week or so.
Okay. So this could actually take place before the election?
Oh, yes, I would expect that, for sure. Well ahead of it.
Talk to me about the other really weird thing that happened with the high-speed internet in rural areas.
Well, this is interesting. There seems to be a pattern emerging within the Biden-Harris administration of, despite investing billions and billions of everybody's taxpayer dollars, leaving rural America behind when it comes to connectivity. So back in 2019 and 2020, we cut a deal with EchoStar, with Dish, to guarantee that they would provide 5G high-speed internet to rural America. It was part of a DOJ settlement. It was actually litigated in court. It was adopted by the full commission. And then in a Friday afternoon news dump last week, the FCC's leadership, without any public input being sought, relieved Dish EchoStar of that obligation. It was just a one-sentence entry in a licensing database. And frankly, I've been at the FCC for 12 years. I've never seen anything like that. It's sort of the worst abuse of process that I've seen at the agency. We had rural Americans guaranteed to get this service. It was a June 2025 build-out obligation. And Dish EchoStar came in and asked for relief on a Tuesday night last week. And by Friday, this massive, relief was provided without any input from me, or I'm assuming at least the Republican commissioner that I'm with.
I'm trying to piece this together. Why would that happen?
Well, I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered. That there was some sort of deal that was cut here, the features of which have not been publicly disclosed. I just think this is one where we still have to ask a lot of questions. I mean, there was a rumor that I heard over the weekend that said that this company Dish EchoStar could potentially go bankrupt before the election if they didn't get this relief. That's just a rumor. I don't know if it's true. But I certainly think there's a lot more to this because, again, the only thing the FCC did was enter a one-sentence line in its licensing database granting this extension. So I think the agency has a lot more explaining to do to justify this significant decision.
I thank you very much for your courage for speaking out and being the guy you are. I mean, I've been in this business for almost 50 years, and I've never even thought of an FCC commissioner because they weren't, they just didn't. I don't know. They didn't have that much effect on everyday life, and the things that are coming out of the FCC now are truly, I think, frightening. Especially if you're on my end of the microphone. It's stuff I've never seen before. As you say, you've been a commissioner for 12 years. You've never seen it before. And it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you start to think like a thriller writer, and then it just becomes more terrifying. Brendan, thank you.
Enjoyed it, and one day I'll come back on and we will have some good news to discuss. I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
All right, good. Thanks. Brendan Carr, the FCC Commissioner.